and kind of moving forward with the manual, the digital delivery and CAD manual. So this will be provided as a Word document and fillable for you all to where you can, these are going to be drop downs. So what it will do is it'll help kind of keep that naming consistent for you guys. Typing in your alignment name, usually whatever highway, side street, cross street, frontage road you're using. And then matching those across the board at the template name that's used and then your surface name. So some of the other things that could be added or could be, even as a separate document that you may have as a spreadsheet, as Mitch was asking earlier, just on the switch names, the point control names, those types of things, and having that documented again. So, right, if I'm working through something and I have all that documented and I get hit by a bus, it's easy for somebody to pick up. And if I don't have it documented, get hit by a bus, well, then somebody's going to have to recreate everything because they don't know what goes to what. So this is a portion of what that'll be. And then the plan just kind of gets into, it establishes what the project's about, the project type, what your roles and responsibilities are, and what specialty group you're working with and what you're going to be doing. That's really what that plan is it's additional information to have for your project so that if someone does need to know about something, you have it documented and ready to go for them. So, so Lindsay, are you back on?
I'm alive, hopefully.
Okay, you sound way better too, so hopefully that works too. I'll go ahead and are you good to share for the court to go through that point control and parametrics on your corridor?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Stealing now.
That's working way better now already.
Yep, I can see it.
What the heck? Google Chrome is my friend. Okay.
Hey, real quick, do you guys use spreadsheets to manage your point names on your templates? It seems like that's going to me. I'm like just
yes.
Use sense. You do use spreadsheets.
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, like I said, Mitch, it should be attached to the template that you're using, all the detailed explanation.
Okay. All righty. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Okay. So really quick, I'm going to show kind of a few parametrics and point controls. And there actually is probably going to be a lot in this bucket. But I'm going to show, so this is a noise wall. You can see this is my US 24 median, US 24 eastbound. And so there's 60, a little bit frightening.
Yeah, so as a rule of thumb, try and keep your parametrics and your point controls down. Once you start getting over about 25 or so, you usually start kind of running into some processing issues. This one we've been lucky because we had the end conditions out separately, so that's one of the things that helps with that backbone method is it allows you to have a little bit more play.
And then another note is, so these were in this file, this is used as a linear template. So you can see there's only 4 things in the bucket, whereas before, there's quite a bit more. The other thing, and the reason that there are so many parametric constraints is because there's not a key station option in linear templates. So a lot of these are just key stations being forced, as you can see. But so if you notice behind this noise wall, half of it is a forced stitch that we want to go out. There's a box culvert right here. And so we want this water to go this way, but on the other side, it's not really a concern. So bring this back over. You can see that we have point controls for the ditch as well. And these are what I was mentioning. If your template is not defined vertically for the how it's set up, these won't work because the control is vertical. Whereas if the control is horizontal, then your template needs to be set up so that there's a horizontal kind of variant that you can mess with. You can see this stitch, we are controlling its location horizontally more. Same with edge of pavement and bench points. Is there anything else to show with this, Jeremy?
I think if you can just show, like you, we're showing your point controls and your parametrics, just kind of show how that correlates to your model, where those points are at, and what they're doing.
Okay, let's turn one off and see. Oh, I missed. Okay. So if you just saw that ditch jump, because the control was turned off, so I just switched it to false.
So yeah, go ahead and switch it back to true real quick. You can leave the objects off to the on your other screen so that they can see the 3D model adjust.
You could also change your vertical offset. So if we do 5, so even with the control, you're kind of adjusting your profile in the sense without adjusting your profile. Hopefully everybody can see that.
Do you guys do that very often, where you do a vertical offset to manage your model instead of a profile adjustment?
I've used it for more of corridor controls. So if you're like horizontally targeting, say, a line, you could horizontally offset it 1 foot so that you're actually targeting 1 foot outside of that corridor feature.
Right, that makes sense. Oh, for the ditch, for like your ditch though, I would assume you guys usually just use
Yeah, we just
profiles.
have profiles.
Yeah,
I think
okay.
that
That makes sense.
the more that you use the vertical start-stop offsets, the more you would have to really take notes on what you were doing, and it would be a lot to follow.
That's where my mind was going to. But what you're saying makes sense. Thanks, Lindsay.
And I think that's an important note as well. I find that ORD is easier to not break, but make the opposite intention. So sometimes if I have a point control or a parametric that I want to set up in my template, it's easier for me to prove that it doesn't work in order for me to figure out the best way to make it work, if that makes sense. So for example, a template, if you have these controls set, whether you have them vertically or horizontally set, if we want to, for like an end off, if this is set to 5, see, but 4 is the control, but obviously 5 is as well. So even if our pavement cross slope changes and we're not being mindful that this is a vertical control and it's set, that null point is set very close to the point controlling it, then our intention might not be for the end condition to be off or curb and gutter to be on or whatever parametric it is, but it's going to be off because the pavement is, super elevated here. So the end condition control is being triggered. All of a sudden, we don't know why that's happening, but it's all how you set up your template and how that control is set up.
The corridor model trips the switch by itself.
Yep. Which can be used to your advantage, or all of a sudden you're like, wait, what's happening?
Cool. Yeah, any questions from anyone on that? Hopefully people are used to using point controls and parametrics. Again, it's a matter of just knowing what you're controlling. So trust me, I get it. It's hard to document everything, but document as much as you possibly can as you're going through this. It's just going to help you in the long run down the road. Mitch, you also had a question on just kind of a spreadsheet and point names as well. So I will jump to that real quick. So one of the things that we try and do too is have like an abbreviation and what it is. So it's a template component material, how that's identified. So you can see up here, we even have something that kind of helps with that documentation of putting that information in. So if like what I had up there was back bottom of ABC, if I pick that, then it'll also help describe it. And so having that information in there too.
Thanks, Jeremy. I'm assuming this is an HDR tool. Do we have anything like this on CDOT side? Because I feel like this would go a long way to make things uniform and across our different projects, and then as well like easy to like I don't have to build this from scratch every time I want to create a template and a corridor. Do we have anything like this, Sahar, for us?
We used to have, and we working with Bentley, we didn't, but now I will bring it back up on. I think this is very similar to what we had before, and Jeremy, we can use that, right?
Yeah, I think this is something we can develop it into, Mitch, that CDOT can utilize, that you guys can have.
Yep.
Okay.
Or we can include it with the ITL or something, just so you guys have an understanding it's there.
Got it. I wasn't sure if this was, proprietary or not, or if we could buy it basically, because this is nice. This is nice. I want something. If I'm going to have to manage all these points in a spreadsheet, and it makes sense to do that, I agree with that.
Yeah,
I want something like this.
We used to have an SS2 and SS4. I think in the beginning we used to have every template that's included in our CDOT ITL. It has explanation about what is that template and what is those points and stuff like this, but it's got stripped out from the workspace. We will be using something like this. This is very, very beneficial to you guys.
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Awesome. All right. So probably what everybody's kind of been waiting for, maybe a little bit. We're going to jump into item types now, kind of at a high level of also addressing what an item type is. It's not only used for quantities, there's other things that item types are used for, such as title block information. Item types are super powerful. We're not going to dive deep into them on this and show, okay, here's how you create one, here's how you do this, here's how you do that. That can be something that's later on. This intent for the item types and the attributed information is really to kind of go over where everything is headed with the digital delivery manual and the CAD manual and the workspace that Sarah was talking about for 2024. And even as that evolves, what we're trying to get to is in essence, okay, well, now we've got information. We've got an item, in this case, an item number associated to that item type that, will be tied to your components, tied to your model, so that you'll be able to run some quantities that will output in those items. It'll give you a start station and an end station. It will give you offsets. It will give you different elements that will be categorized the goal is to be able to output that into a tabulation sheet that I can just report on the tabulation sheet. It produces that for me, and then also produces for a summary of quantities. That's really where we're trying to push everything towards and get to. So what this is it's more of a overview and a training on a high level of where item types are kind of located to be able to utilize that have already been created in the workspace. Again, to create item types and do those types of things, that'll be a different one here in the near future of how do I create an item type? How does that work? What do I need to do for that if I have something that's project specific that might make my life a little bit easier? So let me get into this real quick. So this may look a little bit different than some of you have seen. This is just a preference. I'll open another window that'll be more similar to what you guys have. You can set your preferences for your Explorer to just show up a little bit differently. So just kind of going through some of these elements, I'm going to kind of zoom in here. For instance, if I click on this, you're going to see that it says, okay, it's my corridor, and it just tells me what some of those things are that I have, my components, that type of stuff. But if I really want to get into what items are associated kind of into this file itself, I see I have 609 curb and gutter, I have hot mix asphalt. These are some of the things that we had played with even back in 1010, kind of move forward in 1012 a little bit and are getting more sophisticated in 24, which I'll jump into that in a little bit. But as you can see, if I pick on hot mix asphalt, it's going to give me that information. And it's also going to tell me over here what item number I'm using for that, because this is associated to the feature itself that I used. And again, I'll get into that into this next realm. But from an item type standpoint, I can go to my items, and if there are any items located within my file, they're going to populate through in Explorer. I can get to them in this manner. You can see over here again, item, how it's paid for, what it is. That's kind of where this portion goes. Why that's important is as we move into the future, snapshot in time, Bentley Infrastructure Cloud, I can come in, I can click on that same component, so same file, same everything, and it's also going to give me that 403 hot mix asphalt. I'm going to get end station, start station, I'm going to get quantity, volume, different things like that. And what's being worked on in the workspace for 24 are those conversions of trying to get that square foot into ton, into different things versus having a calculation set up in a separate spreadsheet. So the goal is to have, okay, a singular output from, if I pick that, I can quantity output that and get that information right then and there. So what that does is that helps move that information forward as we move forward and evolve into the different tools. And I'll call it the Bentley suite of tools that we can utilize from design review standpoints, from quantity takeoffs, different things like that. So back to this guy again, so you can see the hot mix asphalt and how that works. So this is being shown in 1012 as that as this project is. So 2024. So again, so here's the interface most people are probably used to. Here is Open Road Standards in my File Explorer. And if I want to get to different components, different elements, I can do that. I can get to all of that information through my Explorer of what's active. I can also get to whatever from my workspace. But where I'm going with this is up at the top through your menu bars, under Utilities, you're going to have a few different things for item types and reports that are available to you in this instance. So if I click on this property, it's going to tell me, okay, it's HMA pavement, it's lift one, cool. I've got a start and end station, all right, of what it was done with. So one of the things that I wanted to mention that will come about more so probably in the again in the late fall, as far as using the backbone method and using different template drops. It's just like having just a template in here. But one of the benefits of using the template drop is actually, if I have a few template drops instead of switches, and I've said, okay, from here to here, here to here, here to here, and I'm using different end conditions, and instead of using a switch, sometimes I can come in with a different template drop. For instance, I know right now within the workspace, there's not anything in here with asphalt, but there is for concrete that we can at least show and display. So I can go ahead and I can come in, and again, this is after my template, my ITL has been loaded and is loaded in my project. I can come into the corridor templates and I can say, okay, I want to just switch that to concrete. So I'm going to do that. So in essence, what I just did was just switch that template. You'll see the switch happen in the screen here, where that material is going to switch over here in a second, hopefully. There we go. What that is useful for, as far as even a full template, it doesn't have to be the backbone method. Even if that's the preferred method, even if you're using a full template for a different reason, you can still run it by those different templates and have those end conditions switch on and off from just switching your template. So let's say I have like 10 different template drops in here. And the reason is because like I have a right shoulder and maybe have a right shoulder with a wall, a right shoulder with a rail, right shoulder with curb, then I can just switch those in and out versus using different switches. So that's another method that can be used. But a few more things kind of go into that, which is why it would be it's kind of its own training later on. But with that said, I switched that one over. So what I'm going to do is, you can see now too, I have a temp concrete pavement now. So I can actually pick this. Is going to say, okay, it's temp concrete pavement. Notice that when I switch that, what's baked into that feature definition, into that concrete pavement feature definition. If I go over to edit feature definition, I can see, and this is what's being worked on, is within these feature definitions. So concrete, HMA, curb and gutter, guardrail, drainage pipe, you name it, you can attach different items. And in this case, a pay item is attached. It says one item. And that item that's attached, you can see over in the right here is that 412 concrete pavement. You also have a type and you have a pay item. So what is being done is in that class, that information for concrete pavement, 412, cool, that's done. Now I can go pick a type. Am I working with pavement? Am I working with fast track? I have a bunch of different elements that I can pick from what type that I'm going to use. And in this case, we're using pavement. So I'm going to pick pavement. Well, what's my pay item for that? It's not just 412. It's going to be 412 dash whatever my thickness is of that concrete. So if I come in here, I can see all my different pay items that I have. So I'm going to go ahead and select which one I want. So I'm just going to go ahead and go with 10 inch. And so you're going to see it gives me that information. Again, currently the quantity is being worked on as far as that conversion. So that's not going to show up here for you. You're still going to get volume and everything else, that can be calculated. But as this evolves, that number will fill in with a square yard based on this information. The other thing that I can do too is I can come and I know that my alignment name in this case is going to be US 85 northbound. I can type in that alignment here where, oops. And if I do that, it's going to give me a station BN and a station N and my offsets. So that information now is also in there. This goes back to the item type, the attributed information. The more information that we can put in, the better for the outcome at the end of the day. What it does is it helps us from a beneficial standpoint, from a design standpoint of checks and balances of, am I starting at this station? Am I ending at this station? Or are those offsets correct based on that? This is an easy one because it's linear. So it's easy that it's 25 feet, just straight offset from the control. Where you get into the modeling effects and the different offsets is where you really need to look at and watch out and look for those things. So what this does is this provides me a lot of information. All this information you see here travels forward. It keeps moving forward with all of the other information that we have, like I was showing through Bentley Infrastructure Cloud. This information follows that. The importance of that is now we've got our design and our modeling. We've got information tied to it. When we give it to the contractor, whether or not it's for information only or not, that contractor has that same information. That information is one source. It's a unique identifier. We're not having to create different files and different line work and trying to hope that they match and going back and forth. Does my 2D match my model? Excuse me. So with that, that's really one of the biggest benefits is I have that information. That then can go to the contractor, and as the contractor uses that information, it can be updated, and that updated information can travel forward to asset information from a repository and how that moves ahead there. So now that we've identified what this concrete is, as it is associated in this element, one of the other things that I can do is like for the edge. So if I want to put an item type to something that doesn't have an item type, for instance, so if like this on the slope, if I want to look for something for topsoil and it doesn't have topsoil, or in this case it's my grass, so maybe I want to pay for that. How do I do that? So with utilities, under the utilities menu bar, I can come over to attach item. So under attach item, I can pick from here. You will start to see different elements that are going to show up. For instance, so CDOT pay items. So I can come into the CDOT pay items, and I don't know, we're going to go ahead and use seating because I don't see topsoil yet, which might be a category in here. So I have all of these different pay items that I can select from. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select seating. I can also fill out the information in here. If I know that information and I want to fill that out, I can put that in here. Same thing with location. If I know my alignment name and I know what I'm going to associate it to, I can go ahead and add that in here. So I'm going to go ahead and put that one in here. I'm not going to worry about the payment information. I'm just going to do that later. So I'm going to go ahead and select that component, and I'm going to attach that information in there. So you're going to see I have a little bit of a square, and you see everything kind of went through here through all my different components of, hey, what's going on? I have all these different elements. So this really starts to update my corridor with more information, and the more information that I give to it. So now I have attached that element, that item type to the slope, and you can see it was grading grass was the level. The feature was temp comp grass. So under temp comp grass, I should be able to come over to here now, and I can look and say, okay, items attached, none. I can also attach them through this area. But what that does is this then becomes everything that's temp comp grass. I can go ahead and in this case, if it's everything, I can go pick the seating and associate that item now to all of my temp comp grass everywhere. By doing that, now you can see I have the information of my pay item. So again, same thing. I will just walk through. Here's topsoil, for instance. So if I want to pay for topsoil through everything in this area, I can go ahead and pick those items. I can pick that type because it's going to be the only one. And for instance, any kind of topsoil I want to do. So let's just do imported. So I'm going to say imported topsoil. So now same thing. I've got that information. Notice that the alignment name is not in there. The reason it's not in there is because I decided, well, I want to do all of my temp comp grass and not just the one. So that's why the alignment name's not in there. If I come out of that and I pick this property, you can see that alignment name's in here. This information is not filled out yet. It should be filled out. Once I go through all that information through that class, it should fill out. It might have to be filled out through this feature definition prior in the workspace to come across to everything. Now that I think about that. So again, I'm just going to come through here. I'm going to go to the topsoil. I'm going to pick those. I'm going to pick the imported and give that information. So now that information in here should all be the same. And it's going to give me that because I picked everything. So if I pick on this guy, it should give me, yeah, my right stations. And I'm not sure why it's not filling out everything. I'm going to have to actually look at that one. Sahar, we may have to check with Bentley on that one.
Yeah, sometimes you close it and open it like or refresh.
It'll repopulate.
Yep.
Okay. So now I've got information in here. I can come in now if I want. What's available in 24? I can't remember. I don't think it's available in 1012 yet. It might be. I can come to reports. I can do report definition. I can come to CDOT pay item reports in here as well now, and get information there. I can also, if I remember right, can't hover over it. If I pick reports up through the top,
Yep, that's the
this
best
is
way. Yep.
giving me the same information.
Yeah.
But if I want to go to my seating and my seating tabulation,
And once you right click and say summary, you will extract that information.
right? So if I hit my properties, and again, like I said, quantities, those types of things are being worked on. It's going to pick the ones that I identified in here. It's giving me that start station, end station offsets, that information. One of the things that I can do too is I can select by item number. It'll collapse that. Once you can repopulate that information, again, like I said, the quantity is being worked on for cubic yard. Linear foot works because it's a direct link of linear foot. So like guardrail, I think they've Bentley's pretty well established that. But in essence, what this is trying to get to is trying to get to that tabulation spreadsheet that will fill out this information for you. So now what I'm doing is I'm checking my design and my modeling, and I'm checking on quantity on begin and end stations. I'm checking on offsets. I'm checking, is that information correct in my model? Is that output the same thing? Is my quantity correct? When I calculate my quantity, am I getting that same quantity? So now what this does is this provides more of a quality detailed check for my QC as I move forward versus doing detailed checks for random error of like typing information in. Well, if I don't have to type that information in and I can have that information associated to my design and model, that's only going to make it better for me, knowing that I'm checking my design and my modeling, and I'm not just checking for different spellings or random errors, or did I bat finger in the station offset? Did I put in the wrong number? Well, now I'm getting the numbers straight from my design and my modeling. So that's really kind of the background of the item types, and from a quantity standpoint and pay item standpoint of how we're trying to get to that.
Before I was going to ask you if you want to select everything and go to CDOT and get that report and paste it, clipboard copy and paste it into, maybe we can show them that part as well.
So do that again. Say that again, Sahar. Sorry.
Okay, so show that once you get the summary report of the pay item you have.
Of this one?
Yeah. And then you can open that spreadsheet that you show what's generated from that report.
So it's not going to generate much because it's still not, that quantity is still not showing up, Sahar.
Yeah, but can you go to the other, which one you just showed has more information? I just want to show them.
The tabulation.
Yeah, the tabulation. Yes, please. You can show.
Are you wanting to show it as a place of table?
Yeah, because I want to carry, I know it's not finished, guys, but you can copy that information and put it into a spreadsheet. If you go,
Yeah,
copy the
so
whole
in
thing.
here I can export results.
You
I
can,
thought
or you,
just
yeah,
say
you can copy it
spreadsheet.
all. Yeah, and go to CDOT menu. You can do it in the tabulation sheet. We actually have, where's that tabulation sheet?
Isn't it? I haven't used that one, Sahar.
Yeah, it is in the tabulation sheet.
In here?
Yeah.
And do the summary, this
Yep.
one?
Yep. And
Yeah, I don't know if it's working yet, is it?
I mean, you can paste it as a link or something, but I'm working through some issue on the polish that tabulation sheet, and then I will have an instructions for you on how to use it. Also, there's tab sheet that's actually we're using to populate this out of that report under utility item type utility. So
Right. And because one of the things we're trying to do, right, Sahar, is have that so that it shows up as the tabulation sheet examples that everyone's used to, that you guys have been using through your projects. So again, more awareness, information of, plan examples will be part of the digital delivery and CAD manual as well. So the output will look like this. That comes out from ORD into these sheets. So that's what we're trying to get that to work.
Yeah, and I told them to make it under the CDOT, the sheet, so you can get to it. Create sheet, or so I don't know why it's not showing. Maybe under roadway, guardrail, tab sheet. It should be all for the tab sheet creation. It should be all the sheet updated for your guys to use.
Yeah, so once these, I know one of the questions came up with spreadsheet. As you do the export results, you can export that into the spreadsheet itself.
Yep.
So
you can export that to that. You see, those are the old one, but they have the updated one that's actually include better or more clear on the information what you need to add. So there is item type sheet. Do you see the new one? Create. I think the first one maybe is updated one. I think I can't see it very well.
I don't know if these are done.
Okay.
So what it's there for, though, for everyone's not is that way it can create that sheet for you, have that information, pull that information from a drawing model into the sheet. So that's the whole premise behind everything. Again, it's not there yet, but we know that will be very beneficial for everyone, for the users. Again, more from a detailed check and a checking purposes.
Yeah.
Okay, now I can pull quantities from my model and my design. So that means I can have more information in there. And again, that means, right, is more focus on our design and our modeling and really kind of getting those things nailed down.
Yeah. We're finishing up a little bit left on the guardrail. Couldn't do all the linear or the pavement linear yet, but we'll have instruction to show you how you extract this information, review the information, make sure and extract that and put it into a up-to-date spreadsheet, tabulation spreadsheet. So that's will be provided instructions for you guys. Still a little bit to finish on the work for that.
Yep. And kind of going down the line over here. So Derek, I think hopefully that answered your question on the Excel spreadsheets for quantity tabs. And then Dell, as your model changes, your design changes, those quantities will update.
Yep.
Especially like if you do a tabulation, this tabulation here, if those quantities change, your limits change, or as you move forward in your design and your cuts and fills change based on what your end conditions are doing, that information will update as well.
Yep. And that's the whole reason for that, is just so to eliminate maybe human error when you forgot to update this and that. You have that will update dynamically once you update your information.
Yes. And I don't know, maybe we could pretend that let me run through this real quick. We could pretend this cut line, maybe that's guardrail, and we can see because guardrail should be at a good position. So
go to guardrail. I think it's mainly.
I'll go ahead and just attach it to the cut line on that it's linear foot. So we'll go ahead and do that. So if I pick my cut line, I should now have information saying that it's guardrail. So I'm going to go ahead. So as you guys are seeing this too, keep in mind, This is a cut line. I just attached guardrail to it. So this isn't foolproof of where if someone wants to attach an item to something, they can attach an item to something. It doesn't mean that it's going to be the correct item. So those are the things that definitely, as you run through your projects, you have to be aware of through who's you're managing your models, authoring your models, who's working on your models. You really have to be cognizant of who's doing that because anything can be attached to anything.
Yep. That's very important to do QA, QC because it is a drafting tool. It's been used on civil tools. So I can just put a drafting tool and assign item type is really very beneficial, but also it can, it's very, you can make a big mistakes if you don't QA, QC your design data.
All right. So you can see I have different offsets here because, of course, it's a cut line, but it's only going to give me my begin and my end. And you can see that feature line goes, there's dashes. So that's one of the other things that you have to be cognizant of too. Is it giving me a begin end, a begin end, a begin end, a begin end, or is it giving me a begin and an end? So really checking those things. So now I'm checking my design, checking that type of stuff. So you can see here, it's going to give me a quantity now because it's lineal foot. So it's giving me that quantity. I can adjust that quantity to 2. Also, let's say it's coming in sticks of 8 feet length. So, well, maybe that's something we want to categorize in there. So when our output of our lineal foot for our quantity actually establishes that.
So I see here, does the pay item information template. So we set in the item type and the user can add also, but we're setting in the workspace based on feature definition. So if the template point had that feature definition, yes, and the or the component or whatever has a feature definition that we build in so far, yes, so will actually be available. But as Jeremy said, we're not finished yet on assigning all the template item type. But we're putting it against feature definition, if that help answer your question.
And while I'm in here, as you guys can see, there's an enormous amount of information. We can add a lot of different information. You can add owner, you can add bolt series, you can add, like if it's a type 3, you could add what type of post, you could add all of that different information if you wanted to in this. So when you attach that element to your component or to your feature or the feature definition to that element, it will populate that information for you as well. So again, it's the item types are super powerful. They provide a lot of information to your design and your model. It also allows you to pull different labeling information as also. And it's very, and again, it's that information, that attributed information, what's needed in there. Again, and you'll see in the manuals, it talks about LOIN of level of informational need. That's a lot of what we're putting in here of what that alphanumeric information is going to be. I am not seeing Sahar that it is populating quantity for me.
The guardrail?
Yeah, it's not giving a quantity.
Well, did you place it in the model first and
Yeah,
then
that's right. I associated it to it. So I should be pulling from this. It gives me that quantity.
Well,
When I
I'm
run
gonna test it. It's just almost complete, that one. I mean, it give you the beginning and the end and all that, and then I don't know if the zip file you had on the workspace Did not include the last update.
Yeah. But as you guys can see, there's a lot of items in here. They're being worked on. The output is to have it look and have it output and be the tabulation information as you see on this sheet. The goal is to get to the end of that, of where you guys can go ahead and produce that from your model, from your reporting, because the item types have been associated to the correct features. So again, the whole point behind this as well is this really goes back to the whole things with templates that like Katie and Lindsay were going over. How are my templates developed? What components am I using? What feature definitions are associated to those components or those points? Because this is all dependent if you're not attaching those items independently, which I don't think anybody wants to go through and do. If you use the correct features, you'll have the correct information. And that's really what we're trying to get to, is get everyone aware of and start utilizing this information. And I would say, even whatever project you're working on, if you want to use HMA, if you want to use curb and gutter, if you want to use RCP, an end section, a signal caisson, a swamp log, a BMP, any of those BMPs, anything that you want to start playing with and attaching to and looking at, just start getting familiar with what that looks like and what those elements look like, so that when this keeps evolving, it just becomes kind of second nature of, oh, that's an item type, this is what's associated, or it's missing an item type, I need to put something in there for that information.
Yeah, I will be providing you guys instructions on how to use it and stuff like this, where to go exactly and use it. But what that tab Jeremy showed you, those are tabulation been added to the workspace. So up to date has all the information you need. But for some reason, why it says create sheet? I don't want to create sheet. I want to go to the report and pull the tab. I don't know where the tab is. I'll check on it.
Okay.
Okay.
So, and there's multiple places to get your reports. There's one here, there's one in the utilities tab, and as you can see too, in the create sheets, there's also going to be one there. So lots of information. You still have quantities, component quantities that you can pull from as well. Hopefully that works. And that's not working yet. And again, I'm in the 24 workspace, so the one that's being developed. So, but you'll still have component quantities that you can pull from as well, utilizing that. And as we go further into this, we may be utilizing item types too as well for some title block information, some things like that as the workspaces evolve and progress. And feedback from you all is the best thing to help develop this. Is, hey, wouldn't this be nice, or could we do this? I know I've already gotten some really good feedback from a lot of the region representatives that have been helping out with the digital delivery and CAD manual and helping frame that for CDOT for the users. So there's been a lot of good feedback there that'll help us evolve some of these workspace elements as well. So any other questions on this? Actually, I see some more.
Yeah, well, she's asking, have you experienced slowness? And that's a good question. I have not.
Here's what I've experienced slowness on.
Yeah.
The one thing that you may experience some slowness on, but again, as you're going through these things and then having that federated model, again, I'm in a live file. So if I have a federated model that has other information in it, it is probably going to get a little bit slower. But as you can see, I just clicked on mulching. So it takes a little while for it to pop up. So that is one thing that I do know Bentley is working on from an industry standpoint of making their reporting work faster, because it does take a little while for it to think about, okay, I'm going to go look for all this stuff. So it takes a little bit longer to process that information. But I would say the amount of time that it takes to click on this, have it bring that information up, right click, report on it. And again, at the end of the day, if I have something that says, okay, I'm going to create my sheet that I need with my quantities versus creating a separate spreadsheet, filling out that information, creating a ORD sheet, pulling that information into a drawing model and creating a sheet that way. That's where I would say, even though there is probably some lag in this, it's going to be much faster than doing it that way.
Yep, I agree. And also, anytime you have too much data and in a file, it comes to the point when everything is slowed down, the file and the process on everything. So want to be aware that's probably separate or those segments, and not to put a lot of alignment beyond like 5 mile or 2 or 3 mile. I don't know what Jeremy the best practice, but sometimes you need to separate those into file and work on them separately and then attach them all. I think that was what recommended in the past. I don't know if this is still the recommendation.
Yeah, I think from my standpoint, others that I've worked with, really anything over a mile, you don't want to start doing too much over that, just because of all the information that's going into it. And again, I know we're chopping up design and models and different things into smaller pieces, but the reason being is because of the data that goes into it. As before, like with inroads and everything else that we had, that data was always separate. So we could have miles and miles of just line work because there wasn't a lot in that. Now all the information is in it. So that's one of the reasons that we really have to dissect and look at those different things. Real quick, Leighton, before I get to you. So Mitch, we have been messing with a few things. I can't say we've been, from my standpoint, utilizing this completely on projects yet, but I do know that there's going to be some projects that are going to be being tested in the next year or so.
Yep.
That will be utilizing these things on with the workspace and getting that information pulled together so that we can really start nailing it down.
Yep.
Sounds good. Just hunting for subject matter experts is all.
Yep.
Cool.
So my question is on splitting up things into sub 1 mile segments. Thinking about back to INRA or the old software, like if I wanted to do that, I could have my alignment file, and then when I go to create my corridor, I just select a different profile that's, maybe just for that segment or whatever. And now with this software, if I have a 10-mile corridor, and I'm fully modeling that out, should I have 10 separate alignments that are all 1 mile apiece, or should I have one alignment to rule them all and then just 10 submodels?
Yeah. So for as far as alignments go, you want to dissect those based on, again, project type. So I'm going to say use an interchange for an example. So if I have a main line, main state highway, I'm going to have alignment for that. If I have a bridge going over or under, I'm going to have an alignment for that side street or that cross street.
I'm talking about just for like the mainline backbone corridor.
Right. So those alignments I'm going to have separated out. So I'll have that as a federated file. So I have my ramps, all those things as their own alignment. So for the state highway, let's say you have an interchange, well, and then 3 miles down the road, it's that same alignment. that goes under another interchange. I would keep that same alignment because your alignment holds information, but it's not process intensive like your corridors. Your corridors are what are going to hold a ton of information. And that's what really bogs down in processes. So that's what you want to federate are those things. You want to make sure whatever information you're putting in there. So again, back to switches, point controls, template drops, the item types, attributed information, what is in there that you are processing.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Does that help?
That does, yeah. I was just kind of with the breaking it up, breaking the corridors up into 1 mile segments makes perfect sense, but I wasn't sure then if having one alignment across, 10 different corridors would damage things, but I hadn't thought about that. If you just have just the alignment file, that's not very process intensive, and you're just shifting the process intense portions to the individual corridors.
Right.
So that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And dependent upon project too, Leighton, is, let's say you have a 10-mile corridor. Well, let's say that you want to split that into 4 different segments, or 5 different segments. You're going to give everybody, maybe you have 5 different leads. So you would want to split that alignment up into probably 5 different ones. And that way you're giving that group of people on those segments the availability to work together as a team on those things, to be able to manage that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I work primarily on urban resurfacing projects, so not very long and more curb. It's differently data intensive because there are a lot of curb ramps.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Sure. No, that makes sense. Lindsay, Katie, was there anything that you guys wanted to add that I maybe skipped over and missed?
I don't think so. The only thing that you did say, but just to touch on, is there's a little bit of this in 1012, and the more that you play with it, the more that it's familiar. So.
Yep. And it's much better in 24.
Yeah.
As we evolve and as we progress, it just gets better. As you all know, with the software and just with technology and the knowledge base of everything. So, one thing that I do remember that I forgot about. So Katie had mentioned clipping in her corridors to where she clipped out for the bridge, or then even where her diverging diamond, where the crossovers were, and clipping those things out. The one thing to keep in mind, regardless of item types or anything else, if you run quantities on your models and you have clipped your corridors, that quantity that you've clipped is still going to be present. So when you run a quantity report, it's still going to calculate and say, oh, well, this quantity is still here. It's not going to negate the fact that you clipped that information out. So please be mindful of that. So Stephen, go ahead.
Yeah. So once we start doing corridor clipping, what we need to remember is we're clipping the 3D only. So line work, if we want to use our corridors for that, we're going to need a different way to do that in the 2D. And then there's a couple different ways you can compute quantities. If it exists in the 3D model, there is an element quantities, and I don't know if you want to drive here real quick for these. If you want to jump to the corridor tab real quick. So that corridor reports all the way on the right. There's a drop down in here that will give you component quantities. This is effectively end area computations based on the active feature definition, and thus the template multiplier and the templates themselves. That's what allows it to give us a cut fill volume. That is one that will not include clipping, or will not exclude clipping, right? So that's the one you got to watch out for. over on the,
It just crashed on me.
okay. As you're saying, I'm hanging out in Civil 3D this morning, so I'm not even over there.
Live.
Over on the primary civil analysis, there is an element components or an element quantities tool. That tool looks at the 3D and should match the content that you would get if you went into the 3D model and selected all of those meshes. So that should account for clipping there. So, and then the quantity by name boundary tool will also account, that's coming out of the 3D model. So that will also account for that clipping. So you just got to be really careful what tool you're using for that.
Thank you. Great point.
I think our report previously does say exclude or include, right, Stephen?
It does.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Those that excluded, Bentley has added a note. So down at the bottom left, it's going to say, hey, this does not acknowledge corridor clipping on that.
Exactly. So there is, but I think to bring it to everyone's attention and stuff, training, future training, ongoing training, it will help people remember all these things. So
yeah.
Thank you, Stephen. I know you did a lot item type on your DNU.
Well, the DNU item type content as it exists in the CDOT environment right now is all annotation based. So we have not gotten quite into quantities off of that content yet.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. We will be, as I mentioned, right after we roll out statewide rollout of 2024, we will be continuing to work on a workspace just to align, give you the resources for all this item we mentioned, especially on the item types.
Yeah, I was just going to go to a drainage pipe of like what Steven's talking about. Hopefully everybody's already seen all the drainage pipe information and all the information that comes along with drainage that's already embedded that Steven and EnvisionCAD have worked on providing that information. So lots of good stuff already in there. So output with that makes it pretty easy. So.
Yeah. Well, one thing, since I have you guys here, once the rollout of 2024 happen, tentatively next month, hopefully, the training after that will use that 2024 and including the hydraulic right away and utility model consumption that's Steve will go over that will use this latest capability and what we have worked on and will align with what we are doing with the effort doing on a digital design. So coming up.
Yeah. There any other questions from anyone else? I know that was pretty high level on item types, but more to come on that for sure.
This is the last item on the agenda, right, Jeremy?
I believe so. Yeah,
We don't have anything else.
the agenda. Yeah, I think we kind of flew through those pretty quickly. So, Mitch.
How does all this play into digital delivery, specifically with like the attributing items to elements in your design? It's like that whoever is receiving the digital delivery files has to have ORD, right? At this to get all that information. It's not like an land XML file or something like that could be more widely used.
So the output of the information that's in there is embedded within that. I know there's the GIS coordination that is being worked on to have the information travel with it. Some of the information is traveling with it with the IFC output. That's also being worked on as well. But that's kind of the end goal, Mitch, is from a digital design, digital delivery standpoint, is the information that we're putting together in the design and the elements and the components travel with it to, let's say, even hand off to the contractor, that they get that same information regardless of platform
Yep.
that's being used. So that's really
Okay.
what the plan is. That's the plan as an industry, not just from a national standpoint, but an international standpoint. So there's a lot of like, I've mentioned ISO 19650 a few times before. That's an international standard. That's where a lot of some of these things are coming from. File naming, those types of things where you have different attributed information that goes along with that. So some of the information does travel, not all of it yet at this point. But that is the goal, is keep that information with it so we're not recreating a bunch of different things or recreating more work for ourselves. I don't know, Stephen, if you have anything to add on to that.
I don't think so.
It's hard.
Yeah, well, next year, once this release, CAD manual release, we are looking into the services that Bentley has, and we own. CDOT does own the BIC, and we have also we purchase iModel server and all that. So this information can be pulled through the infrastructure cloud tool. So without the needing actually to have the software version or the software installed. That's what Jeremy's been testing on some of CDOT project, right, Jeremy?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then we go to Synchro for leveraging the as-built data from the design that we hand off to construction through the iModel format, and then we can tag all this information back into the digital design data and publish it. So the tools been provided, including the submittal, transmittal, the dashboard, the Synchro 40 or whatever those tools, this can use any published model regardless of the software platform.
And so, and what I'm showing up here too is the example, right, of the iModel, which is it's just a derivative straight from ORD. It's the ORD model. It's just a viewer. It's viewing that information. Gives me all that information of what I'm looking at. For instance, I've got an end section, the RCP of 18-inch. It gives me information on ground elevation, invert elevation. All of that information comes along with it. Granted, it is in Bentley right now, but also figuring on outputs and how we work with IFC, how we work with GIS, how that information all comes together. Really, the end goal, kind of my vision would be, okay, we've designed this, it's here, it got constructed. Okay, maybe the invert changed, something changed there. That's then where, okay, the contractor has the model, has a copy of the model. So the model that was delivered from a design standpoint is still stamped in time. So whatever was designed and engineered, that's that point. But now we've gotten into our as-builts, we're building. So instead of the contractor recreating all of this information, they have information that they can update. That information's updated, goes into a repository for asset management. Then that asset management repository keeps that information. That information gets maintained. This end section ends up 100 years from now. Hey, we need to replace the end section because maybe it got damaged or something. Someone was out replacing a utility later on in life and knocked over the end section. Well, it's in the repository now for assets, so they know everything about that end section that they needed to know, so it was easy to replace. It wasn't, and that might be a bad example, but that's really kind of the end goal of this whole thing, is what we do even from a planning standpoint, not keep recreating it. Use what we've started at a planning standpoint all the way to the end. That way the state is not paying 5 times to get the same thing. You're paying for it once. And not only does it make the state happy, it makes the taxpayers happy.
Yeah, and that's why we go over in this implementing this digital design deliverables is really care about the file naming, the file, the model, what you put in a model, what the name of the component and stuff, that all carry through. And the beauty about those tools that we have, like Jeremy is showing, is it's not a static image. Actually, you can click on it and get all the attribution and all the information for the component that you clicking on. So it's really useful and beneficial.
Any other questions from anybody?
So with the new workspace with 24, what are like the top 3 changes between that and what we're using now? Or is it just what we're using now but improved?
It's not improve, it's continue to build on, like we say, improve or enhancement, but also there's some item we didn't have chance yet to complete or work on. We look at, and this is every time we put out an update is just continue our effort to build on what we have and fix the issue what we have and continue to build on. It's a long journey, like always we need to work. There's always cells, 3D cells, 3D level, and annotation and item type, and continue to build on in the configuration so we can provide you the resources needed to produce most accurate design files. So you have the resources. So there is a README file that I will share with you guys. Once I roll out, you can see what we've been added, but mainly stuff that we didn't have chance to finish. We add, we update, we fix some stuff, and this is ongoing for us as we upgrade and update the version that you guys working on and move into more in-depth deliverable, design deliverable.
Can I add a little bit of color to that as well, Sahar?
Sure.
Yeah. As far as the application goes, a couple noticeable things that you might see that we are leveraging. We will be directly accessing some GIS data, specifically for the realm of vicinity maps on sheets. So we have some new geospatial functionality in there. I spend most of my time on the drainage side. We have seen some improvements on item types, since that's what we've been talking about today, and how they get applied and shared between models, specifically on the drainage side. So that's another big software improvement in there. And it's kind of trite, but stability is improved. We get a little bit better control there, or a little bit better stability within the application, in my experience. But back to Sahar's point, what you're going to see is the CDOT configuration is still the CDOT configuration. So we haven't bulk renamed levels, right? We haven't changed the look of everything. It's still the CDOT configuration. Oh, TrueType fonts. This is one that's worth mentioning.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
Yeah. So the new configuration, Bentley has for a number of years been indicating a desire to move away from resource-based content. We see that with the line styles. They're now actually driven into a DGN library and delivered that way. One of the other places where we're using those resources, those RSC fonts, was in or RSC files, was in fonts. So the 2024 configuration will be delivered with TrueType fonts. So we're using an engineering font that I believe originated in Florida and was co-opted by Bentley in lieu of the engineering font. So you're going to notice a relatively, it It's less drastic than you might think it is, but all of the content is going to be more of an Arial font than it was. It's not technically an Arial, but you'll see that. That will require a little bit of effort as we update files to bring that along if you want to consume those. So
we're not going to an architectural style, almost Comic Sans.
I advocated for Comic Sans, but that didn't make it past powers to be. I thought some wingdings in there would be great.
I mean, I think engineering's begging for wingdings. I mean,
yeah. So no, we're using an engineering, and there's a vertical and an italicized and a couple others that again they were actually developed originally by FDOT, I believe, for Florida. So
Yep.
thank you.
Yeah, and just and that's probably a good segue too on just to mention what you just mentioned there, Stephen, like from FDOT. So just so everyone knows too, like what we're doing here, what's been done in the digital delivery and CAD manual, what's all been worked on, the workspaces, all those different things, definitely has not been done in a vacuum. We've worked with a lot of different what states are doing, FDOT included, really getting a lot of information there from different states. What are they doing? How are they moving forward? How does that work with CDOT? How is CDOT working moving forward? Works well for CDOT, may not work well for a different state, but there are a lot of similarities in a lot of different states on how things operate and how things move forward. So definitely do know that that has not been done in a vacuum of, oh, well, we're just going to do this. There's been a lot of thought and a lot of research done to develop these things.
Yeah, there is a question about the truth type font and ADA. There hasn't been any requirement for us to change anything or do anything. I think as far as a style, we need to adapt, but the font size, I think that can be achievable. But there is no requirement at this time to tell us exactly what we need to use. Does that answer your question, Taylor?
Is there a conversion or tool to bring past projects, shelf projects, and earlier versions to the current ORD versions? Depends on how far back you want to go. There are tools that can be used to do that. I would be very careful on the tools that you use and how you use those. But there are ways to do that. The more current versions, it's much easier. It's the deeper you get and the older you get. There's quite a few different tools and tricks to that. Stephen, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, coming from 1012 to 24 should be pretty seamless. There are a couple nuances, and again, I hang out on the utility side on how they're reporting some data, so that we will need to refresh some content there. Got pretty clean process on most of that. If you are going from the older, again, from the drainage utility, there was a lot of variation and change from the original 1010 to the 1010 210204 you guys are running, into 1011, into 1012, into 23, into 24. So if you are going with an older project there, we probably do want to take a stop through the 1012 to get up there. Beyond that, most of the content, at least in my experience, has been really stable coming from the 12 product. So
yeah, agreed. I would discourage trying to resurrect something from like PAI.
1008. Yeah, I don't recommend that.
Yeah, it takes there's a lot of elements that ORD does not like from there. So I would be very hesitant on that.
Kevin there's a calendar or schedule for the rollout next month, tentatively for now, but next month, hopefully, we'll roll it out.
So,
Still working through the OIT and the installation package and stuff. We want to make sure the installation package is actually made available and tested prior to the rollout. That's one of the big concern.
So I would presume, if you've got a project that's going to add this week, don't convert.
Oh yeah, no
Oh,
way.
no.
Yeah,
No,
so-
there-
way.
yeah, when there's a conversion done, that needs to be discussed by quite a few people, starting with the PM and the RE and everyone. So,
Okay.
yeah,
So
yeah,
if-
definitely project shouldn't be converted unless it's approved by, I think RE at least at that level.
Okay, cool. So if you're starting out a project brand new, maybe, and you can wait to go into the new software, sure, great. If you've got a project that's already substantially far along, write it out on the existing software, basically.
Oh yeah. And
Okay,
we never recommend something going to add soon that you upgrade. If we roll out something, that's not recommended at all, because you have to, like Jeremy said, the RE has to, the PM has to, the project team has to know about that. And always there is some data you can redo and update on, some annotations, some work on a sheet, final sheet, before there's some work done that's may or may not have time based on the schedule or the budget of the project to rework those things.
Yeah, and thanks for putting that up there, Mitch. Yeah, Mitch put the plans currently fall outside of CDOT accessibility guidelines, and I think that's a national thing too.
Yep.
Specs
We
definitely
haven't
don't-
heard anything that we need to follow right now for our plan sheet. So, sorry, Mitch, did I interrupt? You're saying something?
No, just clarifying to everybody that specs definitely do follow accessibility guidelines, but plans don't, because there's so much information that they share.
Yep. Thank you. Any other questions?
All right. Well, yeah, sorry for our